and gentlemen, I'd like to call the April Steering Legislative and Governmental Committee meeting to order. First item of business is to approve our minutes. I'd like to call on Vice Chairman Commissioner Gooch.
Move to approve the minutes from last month, Mr. Chair.
Motion, we have a second.
Second.
All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Next, we need to fill 4 vacancies on the Equalization Board. Commissioners, I believe we received 5 applications. David Adams, Jim Baker, Albert Nelson, Laughlin Uri, and Edmund Deslake. As we typically do, we'd like to ask if any of those applicants are in the audience, if they'd like to address the committee and talk about why you want to serve on this committee, then or this board, then we'd like to hear from Mr. Adams.
I served on this committee before, and I appreciated the opportunity and your rewarding experience. I'd like to get back on it.
Thank you.
Appreciate your vote.
Any questions for Mr. Adams? Mr. Baker?
This will be my second year on the committee. I haven't been on there that long. I did last year, of course, with the reassessment committee, a reassessment year, and we spent the whole month of June on this, so it was a real fun thing. But literally, I think it is a very rewarding thing. It's kind of takes a lot of time and effort, but I'm going to put that in, and I would appreciate the support.
Any questions for Mr. Baker? Thank you, Mr. Baker. Mr. Nelson? Okay. Mr. Uri?
Mr. Clyde Elrod asked me to serve on this committee a couple of years ago. I believe between 12 or 14 years. And I feel like I ought to be able to help out the assessor and the balance that come before the committee to help them arrive at a fair market value of their properties. So I've enjoyed the time on it. Like I said, Mr. Baker said it does take quite a bit of time. But
Thank you, Mr. Uri. And Mr. Deslake?
Basically, I'm a certified general real estate appraiser in Tennessee. This is the first time I've applied to be on the board of equalization. I have, well, you've got a copy of my resume. I have a lot of experience in appraising. I have worked for the county assessor's office for a short time, and now I'm a review appraiser with the Corps of Engineers. And I just feel like this would be my opportunity to serve my community. I serve my country with working for the Army as a civilian, as well as the time I spent in the Navy, and this would be my opportunity to do that. So I appreciate it if you consider me. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, I got
Yes.
a question. Mr. Slate, you said that on your application that your references was in your resume. I don't see those. Do you know what page it's on?
Well, there, with each one of the lines, I have a reference with each job that I did. At the very beginning with the heading of each section, we have a person as a supervisor.
Oh, your supervisor.
Yeah,
Okay, I see.
and those would be my references.
Okay, I see. All right.
I'm sorry, did I pronounce your name correct?
It's actually Daylot, thank you.
Daylight, okay, I apologize. Any questions for Mr. Daylight? And I feel to ask the committee if there was any questions for Mr. Uri, or for any of the applicants. Again, it seems like we have 5 wonderful applicants and 4 positions. I have a motion from the committee.
Make a motion to nominate all 5, big 4.
The motion, we have a second.
Second.
Motion and second, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Ms. Becky, would you please call the roll?
Commissioner Black,
Mr. Adams, Mr. Baker, Mr. Nelson, Mr. Uri.
Commissioner Farley,
Mr. Adams, Mr. Baker, Mr. Deslott, Mr. Uri.
Commissioner Gooch,
Mr. Adams, Mr. Baker, Mr. Uri, and Mr. Daylight.
Commissioner Jordan,
Mr. Daylight, Mr. Baker, Mr. Adams, Mr. Uri.
Commissioner Stevens,
Mr. Adams, Mr. Baker, Mr. Daylight, Mr. Uri.
and Commissioner Coggin.
Mr. Adams, Mr. Baker, Mr. Daylight, Mr. Uri.
Will be Baker, Adams, Uri, and Daylight.
Thank you, gentlemen, and we will be recommending you all to the full commission on April the 12th at 6 o'clock is when that meeting begins. And if you'd like to do that, you'll be voted on for your final approval. Thank you all. Next, we'd like to, if the committee's okay, if there's no objections, I'd like to skip to item number 5, the Road Board and School Board Zones Study Committee, and ask if there's no objections, ask for Commissioner Allen to join us up here. And if you remember, this was on the agenda a couple months ago, and we deferred it again until this meeting. And we'd asked her to come up with some draft guidelines, and she presented those to us last month. Hopefully you had a chance to look at those, and I guess I'll let you go ahead and start off with whatever else you'd like to share with us.
I've got another copy of the draft guidelines if anybody needs those. Just take those and pass. And then I've also got a copy of the email. It copied poorly, I apologize, but I've got a copy of the email from Nicole Lester. So that's really what I'm giving you today is my feedback from her on, because that was what the committee had asked, is that we go to the election administrator.
Okay.
And so I'll just go ahead and read you that because it's pretty brief. I reviewed your emails. I sent her the draft guidelines so she would have those to react to. She said, I don't mind providing information to the committee as needed, but I do not have time to serve as a member on the committee right now due to the numerous elections and reapportionment related issues. I'm attaching a summary of the legislation which specifies which county commission districts make up which zones and what election year each one has, as well as term length, which is 4 years unless otherwise specified. I hope this information helps. As far as your committee guidelines, I don't have an opinion as those should be set out by the county commission or the steering committee. If I can be of further assistance, please let me know. So the attachment that she's referencing is part of the email that I just gave you. So unless you all have any changes to the draft guidelines or the suggested makeup of the board that we recommended previously, I think we're ready to vote on establishing a study committee.
Can we reread the motion from what, 2 months ago that we originally?
Okay. Commissioner Stevens moved, seconded by Commissioner Jay Jordan, to establish a committee to include at least one member from the Road Board, School Board, and County Commission for a total of 3 elected officials making application to the steering committee. Ask the mayors of Laverne, Eagleville, Smyrna, and Murfreesboro to recommend one citizen, non-office holder from their respective communities to serve on the committee for a total of 4 municipal citizens, accept applications at the steering committee from 2 citizens who reside in the unincorporated areas of Rutherford County for a total committee makeup of 9 members. A representative from Rutherford County OIT staff for GIS purposes and the county attorney's office will attend the meetings and work sessions to serve as resource for this committee with the election administrator or her designated representative in an advisory position to also attend meetings. The committee will be appointed as soon as possible, allowing for sufficient legal notice. The committee will elect their own chairman at its first meeting, who will give monthly progress reports to the full commission until such time when a recommendation is made by this committee. The committee will make a recommendation to the full commission within 6 months from the date of their first meeting. Commissioner Sandlin moved, seconded by Commissioner Gooch, to amend the original motion to defer the issue to the next steering meeting. This motion passed by roll call vote with Commissioners Black, Gooch, Jordan, Sandlin, and Coggan voting yes, and Commissioner Stevens voting no. Is that the one you're asking for?
That's it, the big long one that had all the details in it. So I guess if there's no other questions, I move that we consider that motion again tonight and approve that. Send it to the full commission.
Second.
Motion is second. Any other discussion?
What's the motion again?
All that long paragraph that she read.
It's basically the committee backup that we had talked about before.
So the mission, I thought the first part of your motion was to consider it, but it goes on to say, go ahead and approve it. Is that what?
No, his motion was to approve the prior motion. If you want to see this.
So do we need a motion to approve the prior motion, or do we just vote on the motion?
I wouldn't hear that night, and I'd like to know what I'm voting on before it be yes or vote no, before I do any voting tonight.
I'll give you a copy. This is what she's reading from. This was a memo that I had created for the steering committee, I think the night you were absent. And it basically just outlines the demographics of the committee.
Well, a concern that I've got tonight is, in your email from Nicole, with her being busy, she's not even gonna be able to do it right now.
Right.
And her being the election administrator, it's vital, if this committee comes about, it's vital that she's is involved in this as the head of that department over there. And she ain't even got time right now, in her own words, that she can't do it.
Well, I think she really doesn't want to serve, I mean, not only from, logistics of everything she does have going on this year, but I think there's, just based on my general impression, and this is just Rhonda talking from an opinion, is that I don't think she wants to be involved in drawing lines and allowing anybody to have an accusation that she somehow influenced how districts are drawn. She was uncomfortable with that from the large commissioner redistricting maps that we did, and so I think she's just trying to stay arm's length from how districts are drawn. And I think it would make sense to have her or someone, more as a resource. I think in that motion we had appointed her or a designee as an actual member, and we hadn't even considered with her that she could appoint a designee. It doesn't have to be her.
Well, there's things I'd like to stay arm's length away from, but I asked for the job.
Yeah.
And
you'll have to, and if beyond what I just said, you'll have to ask her. I don't know that.
If we approve that motion, however, she wouldn't be eligible to be part of the committee anyway. Isn't that correct?
She or designee is asked to serve
Okay.
in an advisory role to the committee.
All right, in an advisory role, she would not be voting, which is fine. That's what she wants.
but she's saying that she ain't got time right now. Right?
Yeah, you've got the same general like that. But again, we didn't talk to her about appointing designee. She personally may not have, but she may have someone on her staff that can serve in an advisory capacity.
But I think as the administrator over there, I think it's vital that she's the head of that department over there, and that she ought to be the person to do it.
I guess I just see it kind of like the county attorney's office. The county attorney's not always the one who's here. From time to time, it's his designee. So I sort of saw it along the same lines as that.
But this is the election. We're looking at redistricting.
Right.
And it's, to me, her being the administrator of elections, it should be vital that she should be part of it.
I guess what I'm thinking, Gary, is from the standpoint of this committee's only going to be making a recommendation to how the lines are drawn. I mean, however we execute or implement anything, it ultimately goes through the county commission. Just like she had said before on the draft guidelines, she doesn't want her office to have a say-so in the draft guidelines. And so I think it's the same kind of thing. I think it's, if we've done something illegal or wrong, then between the advice of the county attorney and the election administrator, if we had a final product for her to look at and react to, or if we had a question along the way and asked her to just react to this specific thing, I feel like she'd make the time to do it. I think she's just being protective of her schedule as well and trying not to overcommit, because she's got, there are priority things that are happening this year in their elections. So.
That's just my thoughts.
I hear you.
What's the time frame on this? Is there a rush to do it, or can we wait till after the elections?
There's not a rush. There's not, I think more than anything, I just don't want the conversation to die. And so we had assured the people from Laverne that we would move right on to this, and when we told them, there's no rush, we don't have to do it by the first of the year. You know, now if we tell them, okay, there's no rush, we don't have to do it until after this election year, I just want to serve our constituents, and I don't know that continuing to stall them is the best way to do it.
Well, I wouldn't use the word stall them, but rather do it right the first time.
Yeah. But I mean, this is just simply a study committee that's gonna make a recommendation. And so I guess what I'm saying is, you know, this is kind of that groundwork, the behind the scenes work that needs to happen before any real change is implemented, before any real change happens. So I don't see the necessity in delaying a study committee, because they're just gonna turn around and, you know, give the information back to us. And for me personally, I'd really like to see this cycle moving before this group of commissioners begins to be reelected. And so if we don't begin the process now, I'm fearful that if we wait and you push it too far down the road, you're gonna have a new group of commissioners who didn't go through the redistricting, and all of this language is gonna be foreign to everybody. So if anybody's gonna, you know, make a change here and have the smallest learning curve, it's this body of commissioners.
And the committee that you were on prior to redistricting,
Right.
I mean, that was a study committee.
That was the actual redistricting committee. That was not a study committee.
But they made they
did.
studied it and made recommendations, just like
They did.
this group here would be making a recommendation.
Right.
It's a recommending body.
Right.
And she was on that body at that time.
Reluctantly, only because she had to be.
Well, I mean, she's a nice lady,
Yeah.
and I've known her since she was a small child,
Yeah.
but she applied for the job, and just like I went out here and knocked on doors and begged people to vote for me.
Right.
You know, it's the job that we've asked for, and I think that's a vital part of
Yeah,
that job.
that wasn't a statement to her character, her willingness to do the job.
Right.
I think she just doesn't want there to be any appearance of impropriety.
Right, and I don't mean
Yeah.
that as well, but I'm just saying, we all ask for this.
Yeah.
And we do a job every day.
Right.
And there's things that sometimes the decisions we have to make that are not popular.
Right.
And, you know, it is what it is.
Right.
You know.
We're at your mercy.
That's my opinion. Not saying I'm for or against it, I'm just saying that, you know, I think it's vital that administrative elections be on this committee.
Excuse me, Gary.
It's go ahead, I'm sorry.
We agreed that night, and you just said this, to look at this sooner rather than later. That was not said at the meeting, but that's my interpretation of it. We knew that night there were 5 elections this year, and so did, and there's Lester, obviously. That was not a particular problem. I think the committee, if this passes and if the committee's formed, can send her written questions if they need to. She doesn't necessarily have to be in the room. And she's got, I don't know everybody in that office. I guess I do know everybody in that office, I guess. That's a pretty smart office. There's an awful lot of good people over there that can answer questions. And they're not going to be changing district lines of commissioners anyway. Those are set 10 years. I don't see any reason to delay. And I also remember my quote that night that we all hear that from government all the time. Well, we're working on it. We'll look into that. You know, blah, 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 blah. And then we never do it. I'm not necessarily talking about us. I'm just government in general. And I don't see why this couldn't take place at all deliberate speed. It doesn't have to be fast, but I think you ought to get started on it at some point, pretty soon.
Mr. Chairman, I mean, it would be redrawing lines of school board or road board members.
Yes.
So there is gonna be lines redrawn, so that's even more vital that the administrative elections would be on there. If there's gonna be lines that are gonna be changing.
Well, really, all they can do is shift whole districts, because the way, from what I understand, the way it's worded currently for the road and school board, they have to be comprised of 3 commissioner districts. So you're really just looking at taking a pie and dropping in 3 commission districts in varying ways to try to get the most cohesive, looking map that you can get. So there won't be slicing districts, like your district won't have half one school board, half another, they'd be moving whole commission districts, is my understanding of how it should be created.
On this, I know at one meeting you gave us proposed scenarios.
Mhm.
Did that proposal, just remind me, scenario put incumbents in the same zone as far as the road boards?
I think there were two, but even since then, one of those incumbents has announced they're not running for election again. So I think there was, if I'm remembering that one right, I think there were two that did put incumbents together.
Two
And
zones?
And that's one of the things that we're talking about here, that there might be a potential phase-in date so that any incumbent that's in office now, or possibly even the next election cycle, we get past those, so that if you're running in whatever that futuristic year is, whatever the committee comes up with, you'll know, okay, my district's gonna be changing as of this year, as opposed to trying to do a shell game with people who are in the office right now. And that was our way of respecting incumbency, to let everybody finish out their term.
And that's really the reason we didn't do it.
Right.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
Commissioner Schaefer is in the audience, and he was on the redistricting committee and served with tremendous distinction. And obviously, he's from the Laverne area, and he was on his feet a minute ago, and I just wondered if he wanted to speak.
Absolutely. Commissioner Schaefer, would you like to join us?
Yeah.
And he did call me ahead of time. I didn't see him standing there.
I was trying to hide. Maybe
I was
you
waiting for the
mistake.
right time for you to make
Okay.
your entrance.
Yes. Well, I would like to, first off, I'll go ahead and address what y'all are talking, the part you're talking about right now. If you look, and if this gets passed tonight, we're still looking at the mayors and this committee coming up with people. You're talking, that's gonna be May before they do that, before that all comes in. If it comes in before the commission meeting, it's still gonna be sometime up into June probably, before that committee meets. The way your motion reads right now is 6 months after the first meeting. So if they don't meet till July, which I can very easily see that happening, because by the time they get around to it, the commission gets around to voting on it, you're talking the first of next year is when you could also extend it to 9 months maximum before they have to make a recommendation. But the real reason I'm here is I'd like to go back to about 1987 in the fall or the spring of 1988. And if you think then, there were 2 new high schools that were being built, in Laverne and Smyrna. And there was a big mess of rezoning going on at that time. And I dare say there was not a representative from the Laverne area that was on the school board at that time. And things that happened, well, bring it right out. There's some areas up there, and that even back in 1988 in the spring, that were the best areas in the world to, that people lived in. And it came out that people in Smyrna wanted it to be just going to Smyrna High School, what was in their city limits at that time. So that was all that went to Smyrna High School. Now there was a little bit that, if it wasn't in Smyrna, it was bordered on the wrong side of the road. It wound up going to Laverne. And it was a couple of apartment complexes for one thing, which, well, they're still there. So you can go from there on that. But my point being, those schools opened, the 2 new schools opened in the fall of 1988. First graduating class was 1989. Then there was 1990, second graduating class. In the spring, before the 3rd class graduated from either of those high schools, a rezoning was coming about for those 2 high schools, for the simple reason that the growth was not taken in and the interests of all the people weren't taken in, is why it happened at that time. 3 years for 2 comprehensive high schools that have been built, and they had to have a rezoning before 3 years were up. I'm saying that's why I think there's part of the thing that goes into people of Laverne's mind, that they would like to, with the amount of students that are coming from that area, that they would like to have a representative.
We all know what politics is. right now, the school board has got 7 members, correct?
Correct, that's what they had done.
There's 3 members on there now that have an area in Laverne,
Mhm.
correct?
But there was some back then too.
But we all can, and when there's 7 members, we can count to 4 real quick.
Uh-huh.
All the school board would need to get something in Laverne would be one more vote. Instead, if you had just one sole member, that voice is gonna be diluted. In my opinion, where now they've got 3.
But I think you're missing something there. Those 3 representatives that have part of Laverne, say, or something that touch on them now, that still doesn't mean, that's not maybe a unified voice, because that means they got 2 commission districts that are somewhere else. And my point that I'm getting is that Laverne, since 1988, has grown quite a bit. The whole county has, we all know that. There's pushing 35,000 people in that town, and really, and when you look at things, that Laverne, Smyrna have pretty close to as many students as Murfreesboro does in the county school system, because you have the elementary schools, roughly 7,000 of Murfreesboro's students go to Murfreesboro schools. So my point is people up there, I hear what you're saying too. It could be, you could have 3, possibly the way it is now, you could have 3 people from different parts of Laverne being there, but it probably won't happen. And the people want to make sure that they have a true voice that goes for them.
Well, and you have to apply the same logic, that we applied when they were looking at splitting up Rutherford County into different congressional districts. I got a couple of quotes here from 2 very wise men. The first being Mayor Burgess. He said, "If you've got a substantial block of votes in one area, it provides an advantage," and that's the same way the folks in Laverne feel. And then Tommy Bragg said, "Keeping us as a whole will help us leverage our political influence." That's politics too. That's the reality.
I don't have any problem with the points either one of you. But I think you're both right. But I think your arguments would better be made on the floor of the commission if we get a recommendation. Which and let me come back to that. The recommendation may be no recommendation.
That's right, to do nothing.
And at that point, I'm going to vote for this motion. But that doesn't necessarily mean I'm going to vote for whatever this committee decides. I'm going to look at that very carefully, and I see what both of you are saying.
And I'm not saying that I'm against this committee coming about. Bringing it back to
Timing is what you're looking at.
the timing part of being where Nicole Nestor is more available to being on the committee, because I think it's vital that the administrative elections be on this study committee. And I'm not saying I'm against the study committee. I'm not saying I'm for it. I'm just saying right now, I'm saying that I think it's vital that she's on there.
And you don't think it'd be sufficient to have a representative from her office, a designee?
I think it goes along with the job. I think it's her as the administrative elections. I think it's her job to be on the committee.
Well, my point coming down here tonight was to make sure that there is a study committee to look at all aspects of it. I think the last one we had, the time frame was very short, and it was the way the motion came out of the commission was that they had to make a recommendation of one thing or another.
Yeah.
And that's what I think really hurt them. This one, the motion is to give it a time frame, this committee, so I think it's well worth it. That this board, committee ought to pass that to go to the full commission.
I'm not debating for or against the committee. I'm just saying the makeup of the committee with her being on it. I think she needs to be on it.
It would be stronger with her on it, I agree, but I don't feel like it's do or die for her to not be on it.
Mayor, would you like to interject, come up here and join us?
Yeah, I think Mr. Cope and I, we had just the simple quote, what we thought was simple, to get the 3 districts that made up the road board and the school boards all aligned, where they were elected at the same time, same 3. You can't imagine the struggle that we had trying to do the research and determine when all this happened and how to make those changes. And I can tell you, I don't think Mr. Cooper, me, either one would have ever got to the bottom of this without Ms. Lester. She did homework beyond belief in restructuring and creating spreadsheets that showed us what we had to do and how we had to modify two of the terms and all of that to make it come out and be workable and doable. So I'm just saying.
And that is the spreadsheet she attached, that is the spreadsheet that
Is
she
that what
attached to
she's
this
got
email.
now?
Yes.
So, I mean, I don't believe there's probably anyone else over there that can do that that level of work. She's a tremendous person to do research and present it in a way that's readable and understandable by all of us. So you've got to have her on there at least in an advisory role before you can really get too far down the road.
And she said she would serve as advisor and would send somebody as her designee, and I think we could probably,
Well, she didn't say that in this email, but she had said it in our redistricting meeting.
okay, and I think you could probably send written questions to her if you needed to. You could also schedule a meeting on a night when she was absolutely available, which she would probably appreciate with the workload that's on her office right now. Anything else is going to do exactly what Commissioner Schaefer said a minute ago, and it could be 6 months after July, which would get us back to where it would have been a year almost since we met with those folks. And I'm just not willing to accept that. I'm gonna vote for this.
Mr. Schaefer, you said that back in the late 80s and early 90s, the people of Laverne felt cheated.
And I'm saying when the rezoning came back up the first time for those high schools, was a simple reason that it changed right away. You know, Laverne all went to that school, but there were some others that they would.
Well, is that the same as saying that they felt cheated?
I guess you could probably say that word if you want. I don't know if that word was ever used, but I know.
Well, I guess
It's very disruptive. I mean, if nothing else, it's very disruptive to have a rezoning, especially at the high school level.
Well, my question is, I guess, do you feel cheated or disrupted now?
I don't know what's gonna happen in the future. I know what's happened in the past. You can say that history doesn't actually repeat itself, but situations repeat themselves.
Well, I'm just curious, right now, or y'all represented?
It's been rezoned, they've been rezoned again up there, and they're getting rezoned right now. I mean, starting.
Well, Blackman, we get rezoned all the time.
Blackman, Riverdale,
Siegel.
But this is, this one's gonna be a big one.
Riverdale and Oakland were redesigned the first semester they were open. By Christmas, and it was chaos for a few weeks.
But you know, you plan, and the school board has done things such as grandfathering in the ones that are already in the school, like juniors and up. But if you're looking for college, and with the costs that's going up in it this day and age, and if you're trying to get scholarships, the more things that help you are if you switch schools and you're a student government officer at the one school, the chance when you switch is, if you have to switch, it's very hard to recover from that. Same thing to a degree with sports, unless you're truly outstanding, but to be the well-rounded in clubs, because who becomes the president, the leaders, it's a progression that goes up, and it's as you get later on, and it's just harder and harder. I've had 3 that are going through high schools in this county, and I've lived with them a long time. So I don't know if cheated is the right word, but I think anytime a rezoning comes, and the one that's coming now up there, if you want to use it, it's going to put Smyrna and Laverne at very high free and reduced lunches. And there's not, unless we hit the Mega Million 640 or whatever the lottery was this last week, unless the county does, then we're not going to be able to afford it.
But do you feel like that Laverne is not adequately represented? You think that they would throw you under the bus now, or?
Well, right now, no, I like the people that we have, okay? I know them personally. Back then, you didn't see a lot of times you didn't see people come around to Laverne back in those days. And who knows what's gonna happen in the future, that's why I'm saying. Plus, no matter what you say, from Stones River Road in Laverne to Manuel's old grocery store out there in Milton is a long hike. Very long hike. And to be able to, that's where the school board, the one zone is right now. It goes from there.
I apologize, Mr. Chairman. What's the motion on the floor? I was out of town and just now getting back in, so I apologize, but.
Hey, read that again there, Becky.
Was it that long?
It's the same motion made 2 months ago.
Oh, okay.
You made it.
Do you want Miss Becky to read this?
Well, I didn't really mean that.
Just let him read it, or you want?
I didn't mean it as a bad thing. I was just kinda wanting us, okay, can you summarize the motion for me?
That paragraph right there, and then it finishes up on the next page.
While he's reading that, Commissioner Gooch, I'll just say, the feedback that I've consistently heard from Laverne is that they're happier with their representation today than they've ever been, but they have long memories and they know, those positions change and those people don't stay in their positions forever. And so they're trying to think long-term what's best for their community.
Mayor?
I just want to make one other comment. This is not all about Laverne, even though it's all that's being discussed. We have a set of draft guidelines here. Not any mention of Laverne or Smyrna or Murfreesboro's in here. This is a generic kind of proposal to draft something that would make the whole system work better. And just because we're talking about this particular one area that has brought this discussion into play, doesn't mean that anything will ever come out of it that particularly satisfies that group or another group. The way this is structured with this set of representation, you got equal representation from every city. So I think we have to look at this in a very respectful kind of way, in that we're trying to determine if there is something that would work better for the whole county and still be fair and equal with every jurisdiction that's within our county.
In this motion, it's quite long, is it in there about the administrative elections being on the committee? What does it say about that?
The sentence starts out talking about a representative from Rutherford County OIT staff, county attorney's office, will both attend the meetings and work sessions, serve as resources for this committee, with the election administrator or her designated representative in an advisory position to also attend meetings.
Okay, I'm gonna make an amendment to that motion that we take out the word designee and it be the administrative elections.
This is just my information, I don't know, I mean, she doesn't answer to this body, she answers to the, that committee, the, election, commission. And so I'm just curious, I just don't know, do we have the ability to compel her to attend a meeting? Or are you just saying the committee doesn't exist without her and it exists at her discretion?
I'm just saying that I think she needs to be on it. My opinion ought to be yours.
It'd make life easier, wouldn't it?
It would.
Our budget does come through the county.
Yeah.
And
So are we gonna withhold money if she doesn't come? I mean, I'm just trying to
So
figure, I just wanna see a real world application.
My logic,
Yeah.
my logic behind it, and the mayor eloquently said it,
Yeah.
him and the county attorney,
Right,
how well it worked with her help
right.
for what they were actually trying to do before. I want her expertise and her fabulous work that she does
Right.
to be on this committee.
And she's done that, and that's actually what she already gave us. That's, the work she did for them is summarized in the document she already gave us.
She can actually continue
Right.
to do even more.
I just feel like we're handicapping the committee. If she can't come or she can't meet, then you're saying it basically doesn't exist. So we haven't done anything.
I'm just saying that I think she needs to be on it.
Well, not
Before
that
we
I
go- hang on,
remember.
Before we go any further, we have a motion, do we have a second for discussion? Second for discussion. Commissioner Sam?
I'm with you on it. I think she needs to be on there, but I mean, if she's not able to show for whatever meeting or whatever, then y'all need to update her, and, I mean, that she's kept in the loop. She's ultimately
So she's
gonna.
on the committee whether she comes or not, and the committee functions whether she's there or not.
Well, I don't want it to be where y'all schedule a meeting and she can't be there.
It's not y'all, I'm not on it, I'm not on the
Or
committee.
whoever it is.
They.
Yeah.
You don't even know who's
Yeah.
gonna be on it.
Yeah,
But what I'm saying is, I don't want them scheduling meetings when
she can't come.
she can't be there.
Right.
I mean, if someone's gonna miss a meeting, I can understand that. We all have missed meetings.
Mhm.
But, I think she needs to be involved at the meetings.
I told you, I agree with you, I think it'd be stronger if she were there.
Right.
I just don't want them to not be able to function in her absence.
And I bring this up not to stall
Right.
the committee. I bring this up to make the committee even stronger.
Yeah.
Okay. I just wanna make sure we're all on the same page.
Any other discussion on the amendment?
The makeup of the committee, one more time, who is all gonna be on this committee?
I think it's in her motion.
Want me to read it or you want to read it?
Yeah.
I like it better when you read.
And Jack, that may have changed, that was my draft, I don't remember if we edited it.
Establish a committee to include at least one member from the road board, school board, and county commission for a total of 3 elected officials making application to the steering committee. Ask the mayors of Laverne, Eagleville, Smyrna, and Murfreesboro to recommend one citizen, non-office holder, from their respective communities to serve on the committee for a total of 4 municipal citizens. Accept applications at the steering committee from 2 citizens who reside in the unincorporated areas of Rutherford County for a total committee makeup of 9 members. A representative from Rutherford County OIT staff for GIS purposes, and the county attorney's office will attend the meetings and work sessions to serve as resources for this committee, with the election administrator or her designated representative in an advisory position to also attend meetings. The committee will be appointed as soon as possible, allowing for sufficient legal notice. The committee will elect their own chairman at the first meeting, who will give monthly progress reports to the full commission until such time when a recommendation is made by this committee. The committee will make a recommendation to the full commission within 6 months from the date of their first meeting.
Rhonda, I thought there was somebody on road board and school board.
It is, that was the first sentence.
Okay.
Well, Commissioner Sparlett's motion would put Ms. Lester on this committee, and we're gonna have to depend on this once in the future chairman to schedule meetings, hopefully, when she can attend. And I don't see anything wrong with that at all.
She already said that she can be on.
Let's
What was
just,
the amendment?
let's,
To take out the word designate out of the motion.
So she's still an advisory member,
Not a non-voting.
a non-voting?
Yeah.
Okay.
With this, on this email, it's kind of,
I know it was, the font is in blue, so it didn't copy well.
could you just read that one more time? You gotta.
Sure, I'll get a better copy. It says, I've reviewed your emails, and I don't mind providing information to the committee as needed, but I do not have time to serve as a member on a committee right now due to the numerous elections and reapportionment-related issues. I'm attaching a summary of the legislation which specifies which county commission districts make up which zones and what election year each one has, as well as term length, which is 4 years unless otherwise specified. I hope this information helps. As far as your committee guidelines, I do not have an opinion, as those would be set out by the county commission or the steering committee. If I can be of further assistance, please let me know.
let's just say the road board commissioner of that area right now, and the school board representative also, if they want to serve on this committee, would that be, well, I guess it'd be up to the steering, wouldn't it?
Yes,
I mean,
you'll
the steering is
apply.
picking.
Yeah.
Yes, you'll appoint the committee from applications.
I'm just,
Well,
I mean, they're already elected.
They can be on it. Way I understand it.
They can apply to be on it.
Apply to be on it.
I mean, I'd wanna be on it. If I was representing the school board, or being the school board member of the road board already.
Normally, those 2 boards would select their own member. Somebody could volunteer.
And you can
Or-
do the thing. But that's probably how they was gonna handle it.
I'm gonna give Ms. Lester the benefit of the doubt here. I think she's figuring that she's gonna have to be at every meeting. And when she came to the last time, where she did an excellent job, she was immediately elected vice chairman. Took about 3 seconds for us to recognize how competent she was. And then, lo and behold, she had to function as chairman when Commissioner Sandlin was in the hospital. And she did a great job. I think she's maybe thinking that she's going to have to do that kind of responsibility and absolutely must be here. And I think surely that this committee, whoever's on it, we don't know a soul that's going to be on it, I know 2 or 3 that are not, but I don't know anybody that's gonna be on it. And I think they're gonna honor her wishes not to be chairman or vice chairman of the committee, surely.
And she does say in that first sentence, you're right, I don't mind providing information to the committee as needed, but I do not have time to serve.
Well, I think it's a real good point that, you know, these first couple meetings, she may not be at all. And it's getting established, getting everything, you know, cornered up, headed into a direction, and then she may not be able to come in until the second or third or fourth meeting or something, or, you know, or if she's not able to be there, then what's happened in the meeting goes back to her and says, this is what we did, or this is where we're heading, is this...
Give us some feedback.
Yeah. So this just gives her some flexibility and still being able to do her job.
Right.
And that's what she's, you know, not in her first full year yet.
Right.
And election year, it's a lot of stress going on right there. So I totally understand her email and her thoughts there, but I believe it'll work.
But when it gets into the nuts and bolts of
Yeah.
the inner workings of that committee, anyway, that should be a very valuable asset.
I agree.
Like I say, the first couple of meetings there, getting the structure done, there's no need.
Mr. Chairman, I'm gonna respectfully call for a vote on the amendment.
Question's been called for. All those in favor of the amendment, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes, or the amendment passes. We're ready to vote on the motion.
Can I offer one more thing? I'm just picking up on what Doug said. Do we need to extend the timeline for them to make a recommendation in 9 months and not 6? I mean, we wanted them to have an aggressive meeting schedule and get things going, but I mean, if we're concerned that Nicole would be more available after, I mean, I don't think 3 months is gonna make or break
With
this
that,
outcome.
with that, I'll amend the motion to add from 6 months to 9 months.
They'll make a recommendation within 9 months of their first meeting.
Second.
Motion is second. All those in favor, any discussion on that amendment? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Amendment passes. Just want to, before we do vote on that motion, I'm sure Commissioner Allen spent a lot of time putting these guidelines together. Do we need to incorporate those into this motion, or some of them are in there already? But I don't want to ignore what we've got here.
Yeah.
I think it is worthwhile to include them only because of it lays out the, like the guide to local redistricting and things like that. I think it's important, because that's kind of the foundation of the committee.
We have a motion to that effect.
I'll make that motion that we include her guidelines by reference.
Second motion.
Motion is second. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Now, on the motion as amended, any other discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes.
I want to say, Mr. Chairman, I thank you for the job you've done. Even though at some point we may disagree at some point.
You can always do it respectfully.
Yeah, exactly.
Mayor?
I just want one point of clarification before we get to the first meeting of this committee. Are these guidelines or are they directives in what they must do? The only reason I'm asking this question, it says in here in specific one little point, it says they must meet no less than twice per month. Can they consider how often they meet as the committee, or are they bound with this this guideline?
Guidelines.
If they're guidelines, I'm okay with it.
Yeah.
All right, thank you. Let the minutes reflect that we think they are guidelines.
I think even the motion on that amendment was guidelines as reference. So, very well. All right, Ms. Stevenson, number 2.
Did you know the budget?
Yes, ma'am.
Oh, wow, that is really small.
Okay, I was just checking.
Flip your iPad sideways so it'll fill up the whole screen.
Yeah.
Well, you do it.
Yeah, I can put it there. We go. I don't need it, I've got it.
We're looking at human resources,
We are looking at the human resources budget.
budget plan.
Yes, sir. this year.
You're good.
Okay.
All you had to do was turn it
Capital,
turn it
we're on the
sideways.
We're on
worksheet.
the
or
HR
the-
worksheet.
We're on the worksheet, yes, sir.
There we go.
So, good evening, commissioners. The total budget for the Human Resources Department that, I projected and also, I'm accepting the mayor's recommendation on this budget is $290,410. And one of the things that I'd like to note is, the line items, with the exception of the salaries, I reduced by 8.44%. And for those on this committee that have been on this committee since I've been in this position, each year I've reduced the budget or of the things that are in the controllables outside of the salaries. And so it's down almost $4,400 versus last year budget for the same like items. As we continue to move forward with efficiencies, we are able to use less money and becoming more resourceful with our application processes and those type things. And this decrease is on the heels of us adding the drug testing and background check screening, which is a pretty considerable cost to the county. And so I was really proud of the fact that we came in under last year's budget and had added those items to the budget to continue to move the county forward.
I assume that drug testing is actually taking care of some problems in the future.
Unfortunately, we have had a couple of positives, unfortunately.
Steve, so how many full-time people have you got in the office counting yourself?
Counting myself,
Full-time.
there are 3 of us now. Last fiscal year, Sheriff Arnold gave us the position to assist. He turned over his employee personnel files and was utilizing our resources, especially early on when he was first elected, and he gave us the position. And because of that position, there are now 3 of us.
And part-time, any?
I have a part-time position that I hold for interns. Our office brings in interns from MTSU, from Tennessee Technology, from Daymar, from David Lipscomb, from Motlow. We've had various interns. And the cream of the crop students who do well, after their internship is over, I use my part-time monies to let them stay on to get some references for their resumes. So the cream of the crop gets to stay until they get a full-time in that part-time role, so usually after a couple of months.
Is it line item 322, your evaluation and testing, is that what you're talking about?
Yes,
Because
sir.
that's down from what it was last year.
It is.
I thought you said you put it,
We
it
put it
increased
in,
that.
well, they brought it in, no, sir, they brought it in last year. We brought in the drug screen and testing, which added to the budget line.
Right.
But we were able, based on the population that we polled and based on the number of screenings, and we also was able to get a reduced rate. And so with all those factors included, it reduced our budget.
So the 23,000 then is basically in the salaries that are the change?
Yes, sir.
About the bulk of the change, okay.
Oh,
And that's along,
Well, I
that
wanna
is,
tell you where the bulk of the change is, and,
and that's what their STEP program is probably, that's the,
well, no, if you
our
look at
next.
item 205, line number 205, if you
Mhm.
see that, it went from 4,000 to 34,000. My prior generalist was, both she and I were on our spouse's insurance.
Mhm.
And when we were no longer on our spouse's insurance, when Elena left and went to Wilson County and Lindsay filled her role, she took the insurance. And so when my spouse left and I took on the county insurance, that's where our money is. It's not in the salaries, it's in our insurance.
Wow. That is a big change.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, it is.
Okay. Good
Chair,
budget.
If there's no other questions, I'll make a motion to approve the budget.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any other discussion? Any other questions?
That's like a good type budget, thank you.
Always.
You knew I was gonna do that, didn't you?
All righty. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Next, you got? Ambulance service.
Okay, the ambulance service, that was just really to give you guys a heads up. The ambulance services prior policy handbook said Rutherford County Emergency Management Service Employee Handbook. And in order to be in compliance with the county and not to cause confusion for their employees, they changed the name of their handbook to their standard operating procedures. So really, they brought it to me as a courtesy. They let me look through it to make sure that it didn't conflict with any of the employee rules and regulations. And really their SOPs lay out what is a paramedic, what is an EMT, what uniforms they'll be assigned, how they respond to a call, and those type things. And this was just as a courtesy to make this body aware that they had changed the name and taken employee handbook off of their policies and procedures.
And the ambulance service has been working with your office for a number of, since you've been here. Since you've been. I know, the other than that, in public safety, I think it's been, something was said about, and I wanted it to be known that they are working with you.
Yes, sir, they do. They work. They have a very unique department and, you know, have different things, but they work hand in hand, and Joe Hafner does assist me when requested. And in fact, if he knows we have a big project in our department coming up, he'll call and ask if he can assist. So he has helped in that in the past. So that was just an awareness on that. The next item up is the social media policy. And I'd like to publicly, I know that I sent each of the commissioners and the constitutional officers of the county a letter apologizing for my oversight and not making sure that the constitutional officers were aware before we brought this policy forward. And with their help and help of this body, I do believe we've gotten it down to a manageable policy. It's a couple of pages long. I will say that Ms. Bowling and Ms. Dahlbarn have given me a suggestion tonight, one that we missed. And if you look on the last page of under the acknowledgement section, it's probably about 2/3 of the way down. It's before the last paragraph, though. It says, I understand that the changes will apply to me regardless of whether I receive actual notice. And that is perfectly okay to remove that. One of the things that we had is it's almost like, when it was put in there, it's like law officer pulls you over for speeding and you say, oh, well, I didn't realize the speed limit was 40, I thought it was 50, kind of the ignorance of the law clause. However, it is important that all of our employees understand these rules and regulations. We do training annually on the employee handbook, and when there's a revision, we make sure that the copies are available to those, so it's not an issue to remove that.
What are the biggest changes in it?
The biggest changes, we took out, clarified mainly, I think some of the confusion that came about on the floor of the commission was the way that it was worded, and I assume responsibility for that, but the way that it was worded was so that if I, an employer, am at home on my Facebook and I'm talking to whoever and I make some comments of, I don't like the way this went, or I don't like the way that went, that we're going to be looking at that. What we have drilled down into it is that if you are at work using county resources such as the computer, the technology, the county's internet program, that we maintain some guidelines for that. And then also, if a department wants to create their own Facebook or do Twitter or whatever social media medium that they use, that there have some guidance and some direction on that we don't just let everybody just open up and do what they want, that it has to be approved. With that being said, the constitutional officers do have the authority to, under their discretion, create those type social medias to make the public aware. And the whole point about the social media is for an awareness of what the county government does, and it's out there for the citizens to understand. It's an extension of our website, it's an extension of our offices. And so we cleared up the language, took out a lot of the descriptive terms like what is a blog, what is a wiki, those type things. And we moved those over into a training PowerPoint. And on your iPad, there's an example of this PowerPoint. I give it to you only as an example, that if this body wants us to use that as a means to educate our employees on what social media is, then we will complete that training module, and if this body wants to approve it, we will bring it back to you to approve. That training module will only be what is social media, when should it be used, how you should be cautious, knowing that once you put it out in the wide world of the web, it's out there forever, and that's nothing secure at that point. And so a lot of that we've taken out. I did send it back out to the constitutional officers to ask if there was any other corrections, and that's when we came up with the last line. And I do, Commissioner Stevens, did you have some other?
I had a couple of questions.
Okay.
I was much more pleased with this draft than I was the first one. The first one just had lots of vague things, and does it apply to this situation or does it not? This one's much more defined. I think if you have a social media policy, you need to define what social media is, and there were 2 or 3 different definitions that are on the PowerPoint that were in the previous version. And I think if you added one of those in, it would be a good thing. Either of them was fine. And then at the bottom of page 1, there's a paragraph that says, kind of in the middle, the county reserves the right to immediately remove any content that violates the spirit of this policy. Posting of content prohibited under this policy may subject the poster to civil and or criminal penalties. And I was wondering, what is the spirit of the policy and what's prohibited under the policy? Who decides that?
Well, and I think it referenced in there, I'm not sure exactly which page because we changed it around so much, but in there it says that anything that would be already in our technology usage, anything that would be a violation that's already in our current policies, for example, if you violate HIPAA, those are something that that person needs to know, that if you violate somebody's HIPAA's rights and you are a person in authority in that role, even if you're a designated employee in that department, you still don't have the authority to do that, and that somewhere along the line, someone may take action against you civilly. The other example would be if the employee's at work and they're in a county uniform or something that shows that they are an employee of the county, and they do something on a county site that is clearly inappropriate, that we would not, none of us would ever dream of probably doing, but they did, they need to know that there would be some action for that.
What if an employee goes on, I'll use the D&J website, and they're using an ambulance service patch as an emblem on that blog. They're using the county seal on there as a blog, showing that they're affiliated with the county. Where's that at?
Under this, one of the things that we did is if they were, we defined the designated, the person who's designated, hold on, let me look down through here. It says a holder of a constitutional position or an employee who within their job description or official capacity is assigned or allowed to develop. They're considered a county authorized employee, so by saying that, if I wanted to create a Facebook, I would take it before the mayor and OIT, and if they proved the reason I wanted it, the type of information that was going to be provided, the layout, and who was going to manage that site, then they would be a designated and could use the county logo or those type things.
On a non-county blog or website.
This is a county website.
But my point is, I don't think anybody should be able to use a county patch, emblem, or anything that makes it appear county that on another non-county website, blog, or whatever. I mean, they could be out there doing whatever. And it gives the appearance that they're doing it as a county employee.
If I got an email with a Coffee County logo on it that came to my email, I would probably, the first inclination I would have would be that person is speaking for Coffee County.
Right.
When in fact, they might not be doing anything in the county, they may be speaking for themselves. But if I see that logo,
Page two.
At the top.
Second full paragraph, it's in there. It talks about these.
What paragraph?
It's the very top.
Yeah.
It may be the
Well-
top on this one. It says the use of a county email address, job title, uniform, official county name, seal, or logo should be deemed an attempt to represent the county in an official capacity. Communications leading an average person to conclude that a posting was made in official capacity shall also be deemed an attempt to represent the county in official capacity. So that would be a violation if they're doing that.
okay, that's a little different than what I was saying, but the intent is the same. That would be me or a citizen using, well, I'm not sure that I've got the right to speak for the county. I can speak Jeff Jordan's opinion, but if I put a county seal on there, I think I need to designate that I'm a commissioner for District 13, and that's just, I'm just one of 21. I certainly don't speak for the mayor, or you, or anybody else. That's a touchy thing there. That has to be careful.
Well, we had it in the other policy.
Yeah.
That they, you know, were not to do that, but the question, I believe, that Commissioner McAdoo posed was who would monitor that?
Right.
And as far as the monitoring comes in place, whatever office creates their website monitors. However, if, and this has happened before, somebody will find something on the internet through a Facebook page or something, and they'll print it off, and they'll bring it to the county and say, you know, you need to do something about this, or did you know about this? And I mean, we as the county don't have, I don't wanna say the time and the resources to go out on the internet and search everything that comes up with Rutherford County logo, those type things. However, if we're made aware of it.
But what if a citizen comes in and says, this is what I found on here, and doesn't need to be on there, it's something inappropriate.
Then I think this sentence would cover it as far as them not being authorized to do so. Right?
I would
Commissioner
hope.
Stevens?
Mr. Chairman, I have a question for our county attorney. We don't have the authority to regulate just an average Joe Blow citizen out there. If they were to use the county seal or county logo on a posting or on a Facebook or something like that, we don't have the authority to do anything about that, do we?
That's correct.
Is that, do we have a trademark?
They violated some criminal statute by misimprisonment or some otherwise saying misrepresentation. It might be a criminal offense if they're falsely representing, but that'd be something to be turned over to District Attorney General to investigate.
Are our logos like trademark? I'm not familiar with trademark law, how that works.
They're not. We checked into it. They're not trademarked.
You could have a cease and desist for sure. And Mr. Cope, that comes pretty close to a scam, doesn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, he
Well,
could.
I suspect there are criminal statutes. I know, for
Right.
instance, if you represent yourself, if you ride around town and put a blue light up on your car, you're gonna get charged with a criminal offense for impersonating a police officer.
Right.
So depending on the level at which you're operating, there are gonna be criminal statutes that are gonna attach to a citizen acting in an inappropriate fashion that may constitute a criminal offense. It's gonna depend on the factual situation.
But my point is that we can't legislate anything.
In general, you're not gonna be able to legislate, tell people what they can post or what they can say about themselves, or even how they represent themselves, with exceptions such as I just mentioned here. You're gonna have criminal statutes that are gonna attach it for people that are acting in violation of criminal statutes.
But I did extensive research on the First Amendment Day. I got out my old law school study books for the bar exam, and we can regulate what our employees do on duty. We can tell them that you can't use Facebook on the county computer. You're gonna be watched and monitored for what you're doing on your county equipment and so forth, but we can't tell the average Joe Blow what to do, and we can't tell our employees what they can and can't do when they leave work. If they go home and say that I don't like my boss, or I hate my job, or if they say something negative about the county government, then they have the right to do that. We can't regulate.
So if someone gets on, and I hate to keep picking on the DNJ website, because I mean, I look at it, But say, for example, a county employee gets on there and uses the county seal or a county patch, off the uniform patch or whatever. What you're saying is we can't regulate that? And they're out there spreading whatever, or they're doing something illegal? We can't.
Well, if they were doing something illegal, we could take action against that. I mean, the county could, or the person that they committed the act against, but,
You may very well wanna go back to your employee discipline handbook, get out of the social media. There may very, I don't have your handbook in front of you, but I suspect that there would be some general rules and regulations that apply to an employee that might touch upon that kind of activity. Again, I don't have that in front of me.
it's under the expectations and rules of conduct in the employee handbook. You know, one of the first marks says conduct that could cause embarrassment or criticism to Rutherford County, whether on or off duty. I mean, there are certain things that an employee of Rutherford County should not do, even off. The other things are conflicts of interest and appearance of conflicts that would diminish the level of integrity of Rutherford County government in the eyes of the public. So there's several things within the employee handbook, and we even reference that in this policy too, that there are items that may not be covered in here in detailed. This policy will be in the handbook for the next revision, and it won't be a standalone policy on its own as it is now, so.
I think, just for clarification, if you're on a blog site, a lot of times when you blog or whatever, you have your picture. And if you make your picture, say, a picture of the courthouse or the county seal, is that acceptable? Now, you're not doing anything illegal, you're just blogging.
Yeah, right here, it's not, right here. Well, I understand.
This only applies to employees.
If you're an employee, you do, that's what I'm understanding you saying, you're an employee.
I don't know if an employee comes out here and takes a picture of the courthouse and uses that for their Facebook.
Well, let's just say the county seal.
It's just as much their courthouse as it is ours. I don't know.
I mean, does this prohibit them from taking the county seal or a badge and say this is, instead of their picture, that's what they put on their, to identify themselves?
I think it only becomes a problem whenever they violate one of the rules of conduct or an expectation. I think if they're putting that up there and they're, you know.
And they're saying it's a nice day out here, doesn't the courthouse look wonderful?
Wonderful today or something
that's not,
like that.
to me, that's not a violation.
But if they're using it for an illegal purpose, like they're gonna try to scam somebody out of money, you know, Rutherford County XYZ department is trying to raise funds to do ABC, and they get people to send money into an address and they've used Rutherford County, that's different. I mean, that would be a criminal thing.
But just outside the criminal sphere, if they use their picture as the county symbol, they can do that according to this.
Well, I mean, it does say that if they're using those items and they're not in the official capacity to be doing so, they're not supposed to do that.
But a regular citizen could.
Right. Right.
It just says the use of that symbol or whatever indicates that they are acting. It's to be taken that they've acted in an official capacity, even though they may not have been. It's just, that's the assumption that is made by the viewer.
But if someone.
So if they were gonna use that, they need to know that because of that, it might lead a person to believe that they are acting on the county's behalf, when in fact they didn't have the official capacity to do so.
But if they do nothing illegal, so we.
Once they do an illegal act or an inappropriate act, that makes it wrong.
Yeah.
If it's something they're talking about, the courthouse just looks better than it did years ago or whatever, that's no big deal. It's something that once it becomes an illegal act or inappropriate act is what I'm thinking of it. And we do not want inappropriate or things, you know, with the county seals or anything to do with the county. I would hope not.
sure we don't want it, but, you know, the First Amendment's a wide array of things, and, you know, everybody's entitled to an opinion, and if they wanna come and take a picture of the courthouse, or if they're proud of the school building where their kids go to school, or whatever they use to represent, or to show the county picture, I just don't see that we can do anything about it.
Well, we don't wanna do anything about it until it violates
Right.
some policy within our handbook, or says something that's inappropriate, or they try to take advantage of somebody out there that doesn't know the difference. We don't wanna do anything about it.
A number of people might do that because they're proud of working for the county. I'd like to think
Right.
that.
Well, that's what I'm trying to get at. Can, like this emblem right here, can someone use that as their, in the field of their picture, and they're posting a blog about policy against China? I mean, that's what they're blogging about in that particular case. Can can this be their picture?
Sure.
I don't see,
But this doesn't prohibit
but
that.
it's not saying that Rutherford County, we're not, you know, they're not saying Rutherford County believes that.
No,
you
they're
know,
just
China
saying,
is
they make a post making a comment,
Right.
and this is their picture.
Now, if they wrote, I overheard at the April steering meeting that the county commission was looking at doing something about trade in China, you know, or some random misrepresenting
Yeah.
himself as, you know.
Right.
Then
Be an
and
issue.
saying that I'm an insider.
Okay.
But if someone
But
gets on
Scott
that,
Broden was here, so he would have already written that in the paper.
but if someone gets on a website or whatever, and has a picture of the courthouse and tells everybody out there that we're all number one, you know, and you don't want us named number one, to me, that's inappropriate.
Well, yeah, and that would fall under the policy that I just said, conduct that would cause embarrassment or criticism to Rutherford
Right.
County. So,
I think that good training will solve a lot of these problems.
I'll tell you, man.
If the training shows people when they're being oriented into the job, or the annual training where they're being updated, if we just remind them it's not very wise to use the picture of the courthouse or of the EMS badge or whatever if you're gonna be posting on Facebook, because if you do and you cross the line, you know, you might be punished for that. And so just tell them to avoid that.
Has the county attorney looked at this? Are you fine with it?
Sure.
Okay.
You're gonna have, you all are trying to get fact patterns into a situation
right.
that you don't know what's gonna happen. My guess would be that if there was something that's clearly a violation, it would be dealt with. You know, it's kinda like, what's a duck? If it looks and quacks and acts like a duck, it's probably a duck. If you get down to that, you're gonna deal with that. If it's something that's a little gray, I suspect the department head's gonna pull that employee aside and says, look, we've heard about a posting, don't put the seal up there, you're gonna total it. It's gonna be handled and dealt with. You cannot dream of every situation that will come up in this context that will have to be dealt with. But I suspect that we've got a good standard to go by to allow this to function appropriately.
As long as we got that second paragraph in this, and we've got the job description or the conduct policy, I'm okay with it.
Mr. Chairman, I would move that we approve the policy.
Motion to approve the policy, was it a second?
Second.
Any other discussion?
Yes, I wanted to, my concerns at the county commission were really twofold. And one of them was, and I expressed them both, I think, that night, certainly the freedom of speech, which that we were tiptoeing around, I think I used that term. All references to that are now gone, and I appreciate that. I also had some concerns, which brings upon my question, about, history. I believe it's the Fourth Amendment, I believe. People will be secure in their, it even says papers. In the amendment, the person will be secure in their papers and their possessions and their property. But it was papers, and there's another word or two in there, and I can't recall what they were, and that was what really concerned me. And now let me ask my question. A person sends me an email, and we get, well, redistricting was the last thing where we got meeting. Now, nothing has ever approached the Bible Park and never will, I don't guess.
What'd you say about the Bible?
Yes, we got thousands of emails relating to that. Well, you know, I don't know how everybody else does it, but I try to answer all of them. I'm batting right in the 98% range. The only thing I didn't answer was the phony letters. Everything else I tried to answer. Now we've changed our system now, our email system, and through the county, and I assume that it's going to be a lot better once it gets. We got a thing today. I got a thing about asking to evaluate our new system. But my question is this: if somebody sends me an email through the county website, who else sees that email other than me?
Depends on who wants to see it. I would
Nobody
think
sees it unless somebody get a public
records
request
request.
information.
Okay. And the obvious question is, who sees my answer? Because there's going to be an answer.
Only the people who do a public records, well, yeah, public records request, because
Anybody.
anybody you send or receive, it's gonna go through there.
That's always been true.
Mhm.
Okay.
That's not anything new.
But ultimately, just the two people that are conversing through the email.
Unless
Unless it's
somebody is
requested.
aware of that and
Right.
requests
Right.
Commissioner Jordan's emails.
Well, like for
So that
example,
happens.
Yes, it does.
Yeah,
It
the
does.
the title is like webmaster or something, or the subject. Does OIT see the emails as they come down, or does it just go straight to our email box?
Well, I know in the old system, I know how it worked on the old system. You referenced a new system, so I'm not versed on that. But in the old system, it would go to the webmaster. The webmaster, who is Amy Davis,
Right.
would print off the email and put it in your mailbox. Or if you were a commissioner who wanted it forwarded to your personal email, she would do that.
Right.
Okay.
I don't know how your new system is, so I can't really speak to that.
Well, you took care of maybe all my concerns, and I appreciate it.
I'm trying to think.
Now they go straight where you can comment on them.
Oh.
Back and forth. Before, you couldn't comment from there. You'd have to go on to their website and comment about, or email them, the person who emailed you, instead of click on send a
Mr.
mail.
Chairman, I had another question. On the section where it says Open Meetings Act, it just talks about the commissioners of the county. I was wondering if we shouldn't broaden that to include all of our boards and commissions and road board and school board, because all of those are subject to the Open Meetings Act.
Are they not called commissioners? Like the election commission, aren't they commissioners? Elections
Well, they are,
commission?
and you've got people that are on like the Records Commission and the Insurance Committee, and those are all subject to the Open Meetings Act as well. So I think that
Commissioners and board members?
County elected officials.
No, they're not. Some of them's not
Some of them
they're
are
appointed. Yeah.
So commissioners and board members of the county?
Under Open Meetings Act.
That was more of an awareness for people, that some people may not understand that that's out there.
Well, I guess I'd like to offer an amendment that we clarify that section to include anybody that would come under the Open Meetings Act, because it's more than just the commissioners.
You said on the PowerPoint that one of those definitions would work. Which one did you, I wanna make sure I get the right one.
Pull it back up. They were both good.
Just a second on that.
Yeah.
We had hang on, before we move on, we had a motion to change that wording under Open Meetings Act. We have a second.
I'll second it.
Motion and a second. All those in favor of that amendment? Or
Aye.
hang on, do we have any discussion about that amendment? Everybody understand the amendment? All those in favor of the amendment, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Amendment passes. Okay. Ms. Shelton had a question about the acknowledgement.
First thing you talked about was some kind of a change under the acknowledgement. Is there gonna be a change? Okay.
Where it says, right, it's not it's about 4 sentences up from this paragraph. It says, I understand that the changes will apply to me regardless of whether I receive actual notice.
Okay, do you want that to come out.
All right, how are we gonna deem that they, is there gonna be documentation where they sign for it and all that stuff? Okay.
We'll do orientation once we get this training tool. If this is a way that you want me to go to explain social media, it's more of defining it for the new hire so that they understand what social media is and how it impacts the county. We will have that. It will also be part of our annual employee handbook training. It will be covered in that as well.
If there's any amendments throughout the year or down 2 or 3 years down the road, I guess they'll come out and then the supervisor will have them re-sign and where they saying, okay.
It'll come before this body, and once it's approved, then we will, once the full commission approves, then we send out notice.
Sonia, can I ask you, when we do the training modules, that maybe we have a chance to review that?
Absolutely. I will, when we got it completed, I just put in a few screens and touched on what the other was, just to make sure that was something that would be okay with this group. And once we get it completed, one of the interns worked on it, and she did some pretty good stuff. And so once she gets it completed, then we will send it out. We'll probably bring it to one of our meetings.
I guess you need to clarify this motion is going to be to approve the policy as presented, deleting that sentence.
Maker of the motion, is it okay that the motion is to approve the policy with the deletion of that sentence?
That's fine.
And the second?
Yeah.
Bruce? Okay. Very well. Any other discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes.
Aye, with a thank you.
Thank you so much.
Sonia, I assume you're going to clarify the Open Meetings Act
I'll send
before
it
the
to you.
commission? Okay.
I'll send it corrected, and I'll send it to everyone on this body, and the others.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next, deadline for committee appointment application submissions. Mr. Cope, would you care to come up, or Mayor? Commissioners, I guess you remember a couple months ago, we dealt with a situation where an application was turned in past a quote-unquote deadline, and I guess we were going to discuss that, see if we need to kind of clean that up a little bit, make that more clear for everybody, not only for us, and for the public, for applicants, and also for our staff, and especially Ms. Taylor. And again, Mr. Cope or Mr. Burgess, if y'all want to come up, join us.
We're just observing.
Kind of stay back tonight.
Can I join you?
No, sir.
Let me ask you a
I
question.
would make one sort of comment. It seems to me to be reasonable and rational that at least there be some deadline date. In other words, we don't want to wait necessarily to 4:30 on a Monday afternoon to take an application. You people have had no time to review it, see it, or otherwise consider it. We hadn't had time to even email it to you. We may have, we may or may not. So I don't know, I think a little bit of time is important for getting a good review and a good understanding of who the applicants are before you get here.
Let me just throw out a couple of things to muddy the waters before we even start this conversation. I agree with the mayor, and I think everybody would agree with that. And by all means, anybody correct me if I'm wrong on this, but I've kind of thought about this, and we've kind of dealt with this. Right now, to kind of use one extreme to another, right now we're saying that we want them a week before the steering committee meets. However, the other extreme is there's nothing that stops somebody. We approved these 4 gentlemen tonight who had their applications in March 1st or whenever they came in. We approved them tonight. There's nothing that stops anybody on the commission floor right before we vote to stand up and recommend somebody that we never saw an application on, period. So those are the 2 extremes that we're faced with.
It has happened.
Yeah, I'm sure it has. And so And I'm not going to start the discussion by saying that's not okay. Because there could be somebody that comes up at the last minute that the full commission may say, that's a better candidate. But I think there needs to be some guidelines or some understanding ahead of time, maybe a 2/3 vote on somebody like that. Just thought I'd get the discussion started off good.
And my question is, surely across the state of Tennessee, somebody's got a policy out there that's working. Has anybody talked to CTAS or anybody like that to find out if there's anything on it? I mean, it may already be fixed and we don't know it.
Well, your policy has worked with one exception or two or three for many, many years. So now we're looking for a perfect solution, and that may be difficult. Now, Mr. Cope may have done some research here. The last extreme that Mr. Coggins suggested is, I don't believe there's anything in that Robert Rules of Order book that would prevent any action being taken on that commission floor. I mean, there's no other policy or otherwise rule out there that would prevent that from happening. All you can talk about is maybe your own internal rules with this committee.
I mean, because 11 votes can do just about anything as long as it's ethical.
Well, I don't want to, no, go ahead, Jim.
Well, first of all, of course, you have a set of commission rules. They supersede Robert's Rules of Order. If your commission rules do not address the subject at issue, then Robert's Rules of Order control them. Right now, your commission rules are silent as to even steering committee deadlines or appointments for consideration. So if you want to go in that direction to take, as the mayor indicated, what's been a policy and custom for a number of years on an application deadline, then you probably ought to install that in your commission rules and regulations so that you've got some teeth to say, yes, indeed, this is the way the steering committee is required to act, at least as the steering committee. Beyond that, you could, if you so chose, establish requirements for deadlines for new candidates to be presented to the county commission if they had not gone through steering committee. Or you could say that any nominee is not eligible to run if they haven't made application. You can establish your own rules. It is your wisdom to choose how you go about this. But as Commissioner Coggins said, be careful what you choose. You may be picking your own poison.
Right.
So you got to consider a lot of different potential criteria, events, outcomes that may happen depending on the rules you implemented. One other comment, second comment would be, you have the authority to make your rules, you have the authority to change your rules. And by majority vote, you could on the night of the commission meeting say that we have a rule that says that a person is not eligible to be elected if they haven't submitted an application. Well, Commissioner XYZ can stand up and say, well, I move we amend the commission rules to delete that requirement. And if you get a majority vote, you've established a new rule that night that would allow you to do it. So the point is, you can change it, you can do with it what you want to. It's not always going to be cast in stone because the rule you make is the rule you can change. But having said that, right now you don't have any rule. And you probably, if you're going to go down that road, need to put it in writing and then presume that you're going to follow it until your wisdom tells you otherwise.
Well, Jim, you've been here with the commission much longer than a lot of us, but a little bit of history part on that was the time frame that we were sending stuff through the mail to the committee members of steering to look over all the applicants or whatever the board that we were doing. And that gave it time to get to the commissioners that were on that committee before the committee met. With today, and we're sending emails out, I mean, basically almost as soon as the applicant's done, it's scanned and sent to us or whatever. Like I say, we can do whatever we want to do. I think we do need to set it something solid, and if we want to change it, you know, there's a couple ideas that I had, not that they're the best or what we should do, but just get the ball rolling. the Friday before steering meets, whether it be a 12 noon. So that gives staff time to email it to us. We can review that, look at that, study that over the weekend. We come here on Monday, we're prepared and ready to go. If you did it like at a 4, you have to have your application in by, I'm just throwing out a couple of scenarios here. If the applications have to be in by 4:30 on the Friday before steering meets, then the next morning, which would be the next work day, would be a Monday morning, then staff would have to get it to us and email us then. Those commissioners working, you may get your email, you may not before the meeting time, and so it may be a problem. But whatever we choose, like I said, it's not going to fix all the issues. We've had boards before, whatever board it may be, no applicants. All of a sudden, last minute, that day of steering, we have an applicant for that board, and we need somebody in that position. And we don't have any applicants. We've even run it till the next commission meeting or the next steering meeting the next month to get an applicant. Maybe we've got one, maybe we don't. You know, I can argue just about all of these that it's a good idea. But as far as on the commission floor, I do think we need to tighten up those reins a little bit. Instead of a majority vote, you have a 2/3 vote. If somebody's going to bypass, and it could be done advantageously if you want to say that. I mean, if you bypass the steering committee for whatever reason, whether you forgot to put in the application or whether you didn't put in the application, and say, well, I'm going to come up on the floor, I'm going to do my politics, I'm going to get elected there instead of here, then you have to have 2/3 vote instead of majority.
So
we can set anything that we want to set, and I don't want to, like I say, throw a whole bunch of nuts and screws and bolts into this thing. If it's working, don't fix it. It's already fixed or whatever, but it's been brought up, and so we do need to maybe update it.
Maybe we should look at attacking this thing one piece at a time. The first one being what really brought this all up and affected us firsthand, affects us every month, is the applications being turned in to the county mayor's office. Seems to be the biggest thing, a set kind of deadline of maybe noon that Friday, so that she can have time to email it out before the meeting. Yes, sir.
And I would like to suggest, even though you guys have been meeting on Monday for a long time, every session, we agree, every committee, what day they're gonna meet on. That is subject to change. Make it 1 business day, 2 business days, or something before the scheduled committee meeting if you choose to
Good idea.
set a time.
Commissioner Jordan?
I'm gonna make a motion. I don't think the Friday is soon enough. I don't mind it. That'd be fine if that's what the committee wants to do. But I'm going to say, I'm gonna make a motion that we set a deadline of 1 week prior to our meeting, 4:30 on at the end of the business, 1 week before we meet. Because we don't, numerous times this past year, because of the way the holidays fell, we didn't meet on a Monday. So we don't need to mention Monday. We'll just say a week before.
So you say 5 business days prior to our
That's good too.
meeting?
That'd be fine too. And I'm really more concerned with us getting the information and Ms. Taylor having time to send the information out. I can see that maybe Friday might not be enough, but if the committee thinks Friday's soon enough, or 3 business days, that's really 2 business days, isn't it? That's okay with me. But I'm gonna make that motion that will go 1 week, 4:30, the end of business day, 5 business, if you want to put it 5 business days, that'd be okay too.
What is your motion though? 5 business days?
Yes.
Make that county business day so we know if we have holidays.
They have holiday falls in there or something, we doesn't count.
We have a motion, do we have a second?
Second.
Just a couple things for clarification. Maybe just one thing, Mr. Cope, if just as our commission rules don't specify, they're silent as far as someone bringing up somebody from the floor. I guess I'm just curious what happens when that next day Ms. Taylor gets a call, or the county mayor's office gets a call, or somebody just comes by and hands a application off or mails it to them. Is that application, do we not ever know that application? I mean, she needs to know what to do with that. I'm
Right.
imagining me being in her position. I'm receiving this application on the fourth business day before the fourth county business day before the steering committee meeting, and I need to know, okay, I've got this great application, but it's past the deadline.
It would be no different in Sonia receiving an application for a job. There's deadlines on those job deadlines.
Mm-hmm.
And if the best person in the world comes in here and passes the deadline, you don't accept them, right?
We accept, but we don't forward them through to the departments for review.
So if it's past the deadline, it's past the deadline.
At that point, it's an unsolicited application.
With this, Mr. Chairman, this would be my comment. I don't like the idea of us as commissioners not able to consider somebody because of a deadline. I don't even know if I even support having a deadline. I mean, I think that we should be able to consider anyone we want to.
That was going to be the second part of my question for Mr. Cope was, if, depending on what we tell Ms. Taylor or the county mayor's office to do with those late applicants, if we do have her go ahead and send them, then is there a rule that says we can't forego our deadline rule?
Let's back all the way up to this motion, what he just told you about this handbook. You should be if you really want to put this rule in place, you need to be making this modification as an addition to the commissioner's handbook.
Mm-hmm.
And in that way, you've made a decision. That is just like the employee applications, we cannot consider that.
But
if you change the handbook.
If we put a deadline, then we can't consider anyone on the commission floor. We can't, it limits who we can consider. I don't like the idea of us to limit who we can consider. I just don't think there really should be a deadline.
Let's go back to what Mr. Cope said. We've had 2 or 3 things that's happened in the last, 10, 12, since I've been up here 10 years. Everything's went pretty good. I mean, in my opinion, I feel about like you do.
I think, really the only thing I think we should do is just take off white out on the application. It says 7 days, I think. Just take that off and people turn that application in. We get it. They put it in a week before. That's great. We got more time. If we get one 2 minutes before the meeting, no one's ever heard this person. I doubt that anyone would vote for it. But I just don't like the idea of us not being able to consider somebody regardless of when they put in their application.
I know one time we had a deal up here and Mike Dunn is our county coroner. And Mike forgot to put his application in, got busy and forgot. And if we'd had not accepted the application that night, we wouldn't have had a county coroner.
And another thing, if the commission meets, say, in the middle of the month, and the steering meets at the first of the month when they announce it, then I may only give someone a week to get the information before the deadline. And that could eliminate a whole host of people.
Well, no, it goes to the next month. So
If you announce on the full commission, say we announce the vacancy on the equalization board, it's going to be considered the next steering committee, which only gives them a week to put in an application. If we have a deadline of a week.
Say, for example, on the equalization board, we had 5 applicants this time. Say we'd have had 2 or 3, and we had 4 vacancies. We'd had to done something, and we had somebody come in here at last minute
that we liked,
that we felt was a good applicant, and we thought it needed to be put on there, we'd actually be tying, but this, we're tying our hands.
Right, I think that if we have a deadline, right now officially, according to the handbook, we don't have a deadline. But if we have a deadline, then we can't consider anyone after that deadline that we may want to consider. I just don't think that we shouldn't be able to consider somebody.
I think that if we're going to have a deadline, you're gonna have an exception to where if somebody does apply late or come back by 2/3 vote, you could suspend the rule or let somebody else apply. But if you have one person that turns theirs in on time and somebody else who doesn't, it's hard to tell the person that turned theirs in on time and follow the rule, if we have one, that we're gonna go with somebody else that didn't follow the rule. So I don't know, but I think if we do put a deadline, we're gonna have an exception to where, like, if nobody applies, or if there's 4 positions and only 3 apply, and then somebody comes in late, that we could consider the other person. Did that make sense?
Well, there's not anything wrong with not filling all the positions. They can be filled next month. If you don't have a full slate of applicants.
Well, like some of the committees, like the IDB, all 7 people have to vote on that one, I think. I think it has to have all 7 people. I read that in the newspaper.
I think you have to have a quorum.
Majority.
I think you gotta have a quorum there, and have a majority. All 7 of them don't have to vote.
That's what I understood.
But if we set a deadline, then we can't make nominations from the floor. We can't consider someone here instead of nominating 5. You know, I think a commissioner should have the right to nominate somebody.
We hadn't addressed that. You still could have somebody from the floor.
Not if there's a deadline.
Yeah, if there's a deadline, you still make a nomination on the floor. We hadn't addressed that.
Well, why have
in
a
the
deadline?
handbook, because it's not in the handbook, right?
Why have a deadline? If you can make, could I nominate someone on the steering table?
You can have a deadline of, say we do the 7 days or 5 days, and that passes. And then say there's someone, we recommend somebody, and then somebody nominates somebody from the floor that didn't even apply.
That didn't make the deadline.
That didn't make the deadlines. If they garner enough votes, they can actually be placed on the committee or whatever.
Well, Mr. Cope, if there's a deadline, can someone be nominated past the deadline?
I'm sorry, Commissioner.
If it's in our handbook that we only can accept applications that makes a deadline,
Right.
then after that deadline,
You're talking about the steering committee. You talking about the full commission? You talking about?
well, I'm just talking about if we put a deadline.
Well, you gotta decide who the deadline applies to. If it applies to the steering committee, then that full commission will have adopted a rule that applies to the steering committee. And depending on how that rule is worded, you, the steering committee, will be bound by that rule.
We're bound.
Because you don't have the ability to amend the commission rules, only the full commission can amend them. So you would have to abide by that rule, okay?
I understand.
So if you establish, if the full commission establishes a deadline, you, the steering committee, would be bound by that. Now, the full commission will be bound by whatever rule it adopts with regard to whether there'll be nominations from the floor or not nominations from the floor. Right now, there is not anything in your rules that speak to prohibit that. And Robert's rules allow nominations from the floor. So you just got to decide the philosophy that you want to follow. Some would argue that maybe you should have a deadline, because really you're only a recommending body. You're not an electing body. When people come through this committee, they're not being elected for the most part. I'm not saying they're not some things you can have, but for the most part, you are there to recommend, to screen, to determine qualifications, to send what you consider to be the most qualified candidate or candidates, but as a recommending body. That necessarily, though, is not binding at this point in time on the full commission. You're just making a recommendation. The full commission can choose to accept or reject your recommendation as they deem appropriate. So, again, it depends on your philosophy as to how that you should do.
My opinion on if we had 8 people apply for a position by this deadline that we don't have right now, and we recommend one of them, we elect one of them, and then we get to the commission floor and another commissioner decides that one of the other remaining 7 would be better than the one we recommended, and they want to nominate them from the floor, I've got no problem with that. They met the deadline. They applied.
Mhm.
What I have a problem with is a person not showing any interest whatsoever in the position until 1 or 2 or 3 days after the deadline, or maybe not applying at all, and just coming down and asking their commissioner to recommend them from the floor. They showed no interest a week ago.
What if they didn't get the information? What if they just read in the paper, on this day, hey, there's a seat available on the library board, and I want to go there and apply. And they go down to the courthouse, well, it's 4 days before steering meets, you can't apply. Then we can't vet that person. We can't look at that application. We can't consider that person. We can't recommend that person. And as a recommending body, I think that we should be able to recommend and vet and study whoever we want to. And if there's a deadline, they may only give someone a week's notice. I think that's limiting the number of constituents out there that can apply for these positions. And I don't think that we should limit that.
But you want no deadline.
I'm thinking they can turn the application at any time.
Like it is now.
And if somebody walks in here a minute before the meeting and gives us their application, well, we can still vet them.
Well, I'm really not arguing with you, but I mean, we're throwing out all kinds of things that could happen and might happen and so forth. I'll just say that, what if it's one minute after the meeting starts? I mean, if there is no deadline, they can apply right up to when
But they would have to get permission from the chairman before they can speak to our committee. Once the meeting is called to order, then we have our own committee rules. They would have to get acknowledged from the chairman.
Well, right now, we've got what, deadline of 7 days, right?
There's really no official deadline, according to the handbook.
We have used a practice that has not been ever approved by the commission for many, many years, even years before I got here. That form was in place that said they have to be in that 7 days before the meeting date. That's not an official rule. It's just been a practice that's not been vetted and discussed in any way. I don't know how it happened. It happened way before I got here.
Yeah.
And I as well, but I was thinking the reason for that was to get everything in the mail, get the packet in the mail to the steering committee prior to the meeting on a timely basis.
I'm sure that had a bearing on that discussion, yes, because it took a few days to disseminate information back then.
Was there a second on my motion?
Yes.
Okay. Well, the thing to do then is to vote on that motion at some point. And then if it's voted down, Mr. Gooch can make his no deadline motion if he so chooses. I mean, or I can withdraw my motion, but I'm not going to do that. So let's move on.
So, clarification, Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
So basically, we've got a 7-day practice, or we try to adhere to now, and you're wanting to bring it down to 5 working days.
5 business
county
days. Working days.
Now,
Right.
And it'd be a rule where right now it's kind of a practice.
Correct.
And we have some other issues to address. How we're going to handle the floor, whether we're going to, what we're going to entertain on that night, and also what do we do if we have no applicants or not enough applicants? Which, by the way, under no deadline whatsoever, we're not going to know that until that 1 minute before the meeting starts. And you're not going to be seeing any information either on anybody that waits until the last minute, although I can't imagine why anybody would, but people will. They will do that.
I think if we're gonna amend the rules, then we need to do it all at once instead of amending something this month and then amending something later the next month and adding more. I think we need to do it all at one time to make it easier.
Mr. Chairman, are we trying to hammer this out tonight, get information tonight, or are we fixing this tonight?
I was gonna bring it back up tonight, and I did. If we're gonna fix it, we might as well fix it and make it right. We didn't announce any vacancies this month, so that's a good thing. But, I mean.
I personally would like to think about it some more. I hadn't thought of all the what-if scenarios, and I don't know if maybe if the rest of you would like to think about it some too. I'd move that we defer this to the next steering meeting.
You wanna defer this motion, or we wanna vote
We
this
got a
motion
motion
up or
on the
down?
floor.
Do you wanna move to defer this particular motion, or do we wanna vote on this?
Well, I think if we're gonna do it, we need to do it right.
Yeah.
And whatever right is.
And I would like to think about it some more. But this motion would just be a starting point. Next time, anybody can amend it next month, or we could vote it down next month and come up with something different.
We're gonna vote to defer it. I mean, I withdraw the motion. If we're not gonna solve it tonight, which is fine with me. That's all right.
Yeah, withdraw it a second.
Well, that's fine with me.
I withdraw my motion, Ms. Sheldon, and I think you've withdrawn his second as well. So now you gotta make a motion to defer.
I mean, we've heard all this discussion. Who's gonna put a proposal on the table? Is it Mr. Cole? Is it me? Is it me and Mr. Cole? Somebody's gotta eventually put something on the table that somebody can discuss and review and decide, is this what we want? And I think we've talked about enough what-if scenarios that I don't believe either one of us can craft a document that will address everything that you have proposed that needs to be addressed. So I think we gotta find a way to put something on the table short of another hour's worth of discussion that still won't get us to a document that says what we wanna do. Except if you wanna go with what Mr. Gooch has said, that's the most simple thing we can do.
Well, if we
And
want.
be done with it.
If the committee wants to think about another month, why don't, since the application says, application for appointment, service on Rutherford County Board of Committee, in parentheses, applications must be received 1 week prior to steering meeting, present at steering committee is strongly requested when appointment is considered. Can we just, if that's not a rule, if that's not a law, can we just take that out for the time being while we think about this?
We can take it off that application immediately. If that's what you so instruct, we will do that tomorrow. I mean, we cannot find any evidence that the commission ever authorized the placement of that on that document. It may have been done, we have been not able to find that information, that evidence. So I'd like for you, as a steering committee, to at least tell us, instruct us to remove that.
Well, I'll move that.
Oh, hang on.
Go ahead.
We've already got a motion to defer with no second. Who made the motion?
I withdraw that motion.
You withdraw the motion to
will.
defer? Okay. So now we're all free and clear.
Well, I would make a motion that we would take off the sentence in parentheses. Immediately, and that to bring back next month, continued discussion, if the committee wants to continue to discuss it.
Meantime, we can call our chairman or email the chairman on what we think. Some ideas, and then we'll.
No, you don't wanna do that.
Don't wanna do that.
You're
I was gonna say, why don't you email Mr.
You can't
Coe?
deliberate through emails. What you need to do,
We're not
if you wanna
deliberating,
adopt
I'm
this,
just-
pull
Put it
the
on my
thing
Facebook
off the
page.
application. Vote to pull it off the application. Neither the mayor or I will try to read your minds between now and next month. And you come in here with open minds, being prepared to deliberate and decide what direction you think you wanna go next month, if you're able to. And at that point, we will then try to craft something in writing. But I can't read your mind either. I hear a lot of diverse opinions, and I don't wanna write something, and I don't want, my preference is not to get 4 different ideas from each one of you and
Right.
have to do 4 different versions of what.
What about this, Mr. Cole? If a commissioner up here feels strongly enough to how they think it ought to be, won't they bring up something here before the committee, and we can vote it up or down?
I mean, that's deliberative, that's the way
You
to
know,
do it.
if a commissioner feels that strong that they think it needs to be, yeah.
Sure, that's what you can do next month. We just won't have anything in writing for you to
No,
say how you
we're
wanna
not
do
gonna
it.
give you a proposal.
We're not gonna give you a proposal, because we don't know what you want in your proposal. And I don't think tonight you know what you want, or some of you don't.
Right now, we still have a motion to basically remove the 7-day requirement off of the application.
Second
Do we have a
motion.
second? Any discussion about that motion?
Does this motion, go to the full commission, or do you need to go to the full commission?
Everything goes to the full commission. We don't know whether the full commission actually implemented this 10 years, 20 years ago, but just in case it did, we want them to consent.
Motion and a second. Any other discussion about that motion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Any other business? Please, if you have any suggestions, thoughts, ideas, questions, please call the mayor, call Mr. Cope.
Or don't call you.
Don't call me. Call Mr. Broden, discuss those with anybody
Ms.
except
Allen,
me.
call Ms. Allen.
And, let's try and nail this down next month.
All right.
Motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second?
Second, whatever.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye.